All right, welcome back. We are INFR3110. That's Game Engine Design Implementation in the Fall 2020 semester at Ontario Tech. And it's week 9, part 2 actually of our broadcast. I wasn't going to record this part, but well, why not? We're talking about the new Unity input system. And we started off with talking about the old system. We kind of said, well, you know, the old system, not that great. We have a series of if statements, the way it works. As an example, it uses if-else branching, which isn't fantastic. And the new Unity system, what it does is it gives us some more flexibility in terms of input. And it has 3 or 4 different building blocks we're going to be talking about today: an input, action, assets, object, and actions, bindings, and something called the player input component. And there's a bit of a map that I kind of put together, which is basically you got devices, the Unity engine, some events that go into the input system, some actions that come out that basically are in the player input script, and then we notify in the game code. Notice that notify thing. We talked about this being the almost like a component or a command system. And what we've done is we've gone to here and we said let's download the package, which is the new input system package from the package manager. And the way we did that in brief is we pulled up Unity. We were looking at a little project here, which is a procedurally generated world. And what I did was I went to our Windows system, and I went to our package manager, and under package manager I went to the Unity registry. And from the Unity registry, I went to the input system and I installed it. And then it asked me to reboot the system. In the meantime, before that, we have a little tile palette in a grid. I'm using a 2D kind of game. And I went to Window and I went to 2D tile palette. The tile palette would come up. And then what I asked you guys to do was to draw a little level, right, inside the grid. So using the tiles that I've provided for you on the tile map, basically you select the tile, and then once you select it, you can draw it anywhere you want on the screen, or you can erase it with the proper tools. Okay, so that's what I've asked you to do. And I've also asked you to pull in the little character, which has a default idle animation right now. That's what it looks like. And when you make it go for now, all he does is he falls because he's got a little rigid body 2D and a capsule collider 2D. That's where we are right now. Hopefully you guys are all with me at this point. Okay, so that's where we are, and let's talk about how to do this. We want to make the new input system work, and one thing we have to do is download and install the package. The next part is we're going to follow the PowerPoint here. What it tells us to do after we've installed the package, and we're just following this through, and if you actually follow the PowerPoint, it tells you to do the same thing. What we want to do now is we want to create a new asset. So if we go to Assets, Create, Input Actions, and we're going to make a brand new input action for ourselves. Let's do that. So I'm back to here. I'm going to stop the play. I'm going to go to Assets, right? I'm going to go to Create, and then at the bottom there's something called Input Actions. Let's go there. Are you with me? You should see this when it comes up. There's a new input action that comes up. We're going to call this, it's in the wrong spot, we're going to move it. I'm going to call it my controls. You can call it whatever you like, right? But that's what it is right now. I'm going to move this my controls into another folder. So I'm going to right click and go create, new folder. I'm going to call this controls. And in my assets from my prefabs, that's where I dropped it in by accident. I'm going to take my controls asset, input asset, and drag and drop it into controls. So now I have it in my controls area. Okay. What I want to do now is double click on it. Now you can double click, but if you click on it once, it says edit asset. That's another thing to do as well. Okay, so you can edit the asset or you can double click on the control. It's up to you. I'm going to double click. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up this screen. Now in the PowerPoint, I go into detail about what each of those things are. So for example, 1 is the action maps, 2 is the actions area, 3 is the properties, and 4, you have to make sure you click autosave or that bad things would happen, right? So let's do that. So again, going back, I'm going to click on autosave as an example, and I want to do some create a new action map. So I want to do the first one, which is going to be move, the move action, right? So I'm going to click plus, right? And it says a new action map. And when I hear new action map, it's for who? Who is this action map for? In the PowerPoint, what I've asked you to make it is for the player. Okay, so action map, you can make it for whatever you want, for the game, a level. You can make different action maps for different scenarios. I want to make it for the player itself. Okay, so that's what you should see inside action maps right now. Under actions, right now we have a new action. If I double click on the new action, I can change its name to whatever I want. I'm going to call this the move action. Okay, move action. And notice what it says here. Under the move action, I just created something called jump before, but we're going to make the move action happen. All right, so I'm going to go down to the next part of the PowerPoint. So player is an action maps, move action. We said jump over here. We're going to go back and do jump again, but we're going to make the move action first in this case, because you just want to move them right and left. All right, so how do we do that? On page 47 of the PowerPoint, it gives us an example of a jump action. We're going to do the same thing with a move action. So again, we're going to click the little plus icon if we don't have it. And what we want is two things. Right here in the jump action, we allowed spacebar or left button. The only thing I want in the move action for now, right, so just this move action, is I want a binding, right, for, just moving left and right. So a couple things we can do here. I can make it so that there's a binding for our WASD keys. All we care about right now is A and D. And we can also, maybe we also want to use the left and right arrows to do that. So let's think about all the bindings we need to use. So here on the right, you can decide which binding you want. If it's a keyboard binding, a joystick binding, a gamepad binding, a mouse binding, which kind of binding is it going to be, right? I'm going to choose keyboard. I'm going to click this little arrow on the right. On the right, you're going to see that it says any key, but if I want to find a specific keyboard or a key, for example, if I want the A key, right? So you can see A on the keyboard, right? And I can choose A as a binding. Okay, so A, and this is move, right? But maybe what we want to do is, curious for you guys, do you want all the move to be in one binding, or do you think it might be best if we had move left on a separate binding and move right on another one? What are your thoughts, guys? You can make it all one. It's not a big issue. We can take all the input, and then from that, the default input system would tell us that, yeah, you'd want to have everything on a different binding, if you will, right? Here, we can put everything together, and we can figure out which one is moving or is being pressed. So here's the A from the keyboard, right? Let's get more. So I'm going to click plus, and I'm going to add another binding, right? And under this binding, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back to the keyboard, and we're going to press the other one, D, which is the other binding that we want. So A and D. I'm going to add another binding, and I'm going to choose the arrow keys this time. So again, on the keyboard, I want to choose the arrow keys. So this is kind of interesting. I want to choose the left arrow on the keyboard, right? So how do I do that? How do I do arrow left? Well, there's left arrow is what we want to choose. You can actually search for that, left arrow. Let's do the next one. Another binding. Add binding. Go to the keyboard and go right arrow. If I type in right arrow, you'll see that right arrow comes up here. All right, so those are the bindings we have. We have all the bindings now for moving left and right, as an example, which is all we want. We don't want our character to move up and down. The only way he's going to move up and down is if the character jumps. Okay. So that's the second step. The first step is you define an action map. The second step is you create some kind of action, the move action, and then you decide which bindings, A, D, left arrow, right arrow. These are all the bindings that actually make the character move. Okay? Okay. So let's save that. And let's go back to the PowerPoint. So it tells us to do that. It doesn't matter where we're doing the jump or whatever. Let's get the jump going too. It might as well develop the jump binding even though we're not going to use it at this point. It says spacebar or left button. I'm just going to make it so it's the spacebar that jumps. Okay, so no left button because we're not going to use the mouse today. So again, let's make a new action. So we've got the move action. Let's add another action. So a new action we're going to make is going to be called jump. And just like before, we're going to click on the binding and we're going to go back to the right where it says the binding path. And on the binding path, I want to choose, again, you can choose whatever you want. I'm just choosing keyboard, right? And on the keyboard side, what I want to choose is the space bar. So I'm going to say space, keyboard. There you go. So now we have two actions, right, for a single map, and we have multiple bindings. Are you with me? Check mark if you're with me, X if you don't know what the heck I'm doing, and or you're lost. I can go back. I want to help you guys out because, okay, Dylan, can I help you, Dylan? If you want to come on the mic too, you can always come on the mic and tell me what's wrong, and I can try and do some troubleshooting with you. All right. So some of you, it looks like there's a pile of you that are good, and I didn't have a lot of trouble for a lot of you. Some of you might be watching. Let's move on. So this is the first part. The first part is going into My Controls, which is a new Input Actions asset. That's what this thing is called, right? And then if I close this down, and if I go back to the PowerPoint for a second, I just want to keep referring back to this so you can see it. So the first part is doing this part, which is what we've done. Okay, so we've associated different actions with different bindings, key bindings. All right, that's what we've done. Part two, right, is I want to use, first of all, I want to get the actual object. We want to make a new player input component on the player. So let's go to the player. Here's the player prefab. And I'm just going to collapse all these things, right? So these things are all just collapsing. I don't need them all. I've got like the player behavior. We're going to add to that later on. Capsule collider and rigid body. And I'm going to add a new component. And if I start typing player, there's something called player input. That's a brand new component that they've created for the new input manager. So if you double click on that or just click once, it'll connect a new component called the player input component. All right. So what we want to do now is we want to drag and drop from my controls into the actions input action asset area up here. So drag and drop from here to there. All right. And then what this does is it creates an association with my input action asset, which I made before, this thing, right, by double clicking it, with the player input component that we've attached to the player character. I want to update the my player prefab, right? So under overrides, that doesn't say this in the PowerPoint, but I want to go to overrides and I want to go to apply all. If I don't do this, the player prefab will not have my new player input component on it. If I pull it in again, remember I want to generate the player. I don't want him to be in the scene the whole time. If we can get to that part, I'd like to do that later. Cool. So that's the first part. Now, there's another part over here. It says behavior. The default behavior is send messages. Now, as you said, Anthony, sending messages needs us to use a lambda expression syntax. Let me go to that in the PowerPoint first. So if I go to the PowerPoint, the first thing that you're going to see after we've done all this, it says, hey, this is pretty cool, make a new script, whatever. And it asks us to use this lambda expression syntax. It looks like this, and it'll actually work. What you do is you need a input action, And in order for us to change the script in the player, we have to actually put in the new input system in Unity Engine. We'll do that in a second, okay? But this is the syntax that we use with lambda expression, and lambda expressions are kind of clunky still. I think there's still a way to go with how they've kind of programmed this. I think there's going to be another iteration for this one to make it work. I found that every time I use this system, there's always some kind of little issue, and it's not that well documented, just like you said online. So there's an easier way of doing this. We're not going to do it quite this way. But for now, before we move on, let's get into that player controller that we made. So I'm going to go back into Unity. I'm going to go onto the player, and under the player, you're going to see that there's a script called player behavior. Double click on the script up here, or you can go to scripts and double click on the player behavior script here. It's going to bring up Visual Studio 2019. The player controller script is empty at this point, okay? And we're going to make everything happen properly. So how do we do that? First thing is, under Unity Engine, what we want is going to say using Unity Engine, and we want to put input system. All right, the input system for the Unity Engine. We want to connect that first. Okay, so what this does is it enables some of the bindings that are required for us to make things happen. Okay, so that's number one. I'm waiting for ReSharper to finish off its updates. Save. Okay, now there's a couple things we need. I have this old move variable, and it's being attached to the update system. We don't need it to be in its own update at all. So let's just kill this. We'll kill move, and we'll kill this, and we'll make a new function. Okay, and again, if you follow the PowerPoints, I want to go to the next set of PowerPoints. I'm just moving past this for a second, where I'm going to go to page 55, and in page 55, right, notice in page 55 I commented out stuff, but what we want is this input action callback context to be attached to our method. So again, page 55 of the PowerPoint, we want this to come on. So what that means is I make a brand new method called move that's public, that returns void, and we're going to call it on move. We're going to make two of them, on move and on jump. On move is going to take that input action, right, context is what it's going to be. This input action callback context. Input action callback context, and we're going to call that context. So your method should look like this. On move. We'll make another one for jump because we know jumping is coming as well. So we'll say public void on jump, input action, callback context, context. So we have the ability for us to use moving or jumping. We don't need update right now, and we may not need it later on. Okay. Is there a using input actions? No. Well, you want to use this one. Unity Engine Input System is what you want. But it'd be nice. You're trying to cut this down is what you want, right? Like if I'm going to go something like input system dot, input actions kind of stuff, right? And there isn't anything like that. Okay, are you with me? Check marks if you're with me, X's if you're not. I'm going slow. I want you guys all to get this, so you know how to use the new input system. And again, if you already know how to use this, you're gonna your challenge is try and make it work, try and make it move. Thank you. All right, so now that we've got these, I'm not programming them yet. All I want to do is I want to connect these two methods to my player input component. So I'm going to save this. Make sure you save it. Control S. And from here, I want to go back to Unity. And I want to look at the player component under the player prefab. Under the player input component, you're going to have this behavior called send message. This is where you were talking about, Anthony. Let's change this, right, from send message to invoke Unity events, which is what we want. Then what it's going to do is it's going to pop up this little events area, right? A Unity events area that's kind of collapsed. We want to expand it. And then underneath that, there's a player area. This player area is because of the default map. The default map for our input map is the player input action asset that we're using. So I'm going to just expand the player area as well. Now you see a couple of these things here that we know and love so well. One of them is called move, and the other one is called jump. Look at that. Beautiful thing, right? What I want is I want to click on plus next to the move callback context, right? And I want to drag and drop my player, which has the move script, onto it, like so. We're going to do the same thing in a second for the jump. Then I'm going to go to no function, where it says no function. And what I want is my player behavior. I'm going to go back to player behavior. And under player behavior, you can see that there's a related function called onMove right here. I want to select this one. I'm going to do the same thing for jump. So I'm going to jump. I'm going to click the plus. It's going to add an empty space for an object reference. I'm going to take the player prefab object, drag and drop it on. Then I'm going to go into no function. I'm going to pull it down. I'm going to go into player behavior. I'm going to go across to where it says on jump and click onto it. Cool. And after I've done that, we've bound my input action asset, which is this my controls thing, through my player input component to my player behavior script, and to the two event handlers, if you will, that we've created, on move and on jump. I want to go to my overrides again for my prefab, and I want to apply all, so that all the changes we just made are going to take effect and they'll be saved in my prefab. It's a great time to save the scene, Control S, and save the project. File, save project. Okay, let's go back to Visual Studio 2019 again. All right, now that we have these, let's test them. Let's just do a debug log. And I'm going to say something like, move activated. We don't know which move yet. And over here, we're going to say, we're going to do a debug.log. And we're going to say jump activated. Let's just check that those two both work. Okay? I want to know that if I press the A or D keys or left or right arrows or the space bar, I'm going to be able to jump. Okay? Or move. Let's try it out and let's run it. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to press play. And let's see if it works. So if I press the space bar, we should get in our console kind of something that looks like this. Jump activated. Okay, cool. And if I press the A and D keys, or D, or the arrows, we're going to get move activated. This is indicative that everything is working well. If you don't get this, that means something is not connected. Again, I'm going to ask, are you with me? Do you have this? If you don't, you're missing something. If you do, you're golden. Who's golden with me? I got 3, 4, a couple people that don't have it ready. Let's go to people. Jonah, you're having some challenge, and I'm seeing a hand with Anthony still. What happens if you can't see the events in the input? That means, are you talking about Anthony in your player over here? You can't see the events over here, or you can't see the events. Yours not outpointing to the console. All right. If you can't see the events in here when you go, if you don't see these events, like my move event and my jump event, is this what you're not seeing? Or are you not seeing the on jump and on move? Are you seeing on move and on jump? Yes or no? No. Did you open up both the events and the player area? Okay, so you've got this, but you're not seeing this. That means there's how about the default map? Is the default map player? Is it? Okay, if it's not player, then you wouldn't see it because that's why events player are there. If I was to change this map to something else, it wouldn't be there, right? And Jonah, I'm going to get to you in a second. So do you have all this, Jonah? Did you map it like this? Is everything else good? Okay, good. And when you mapped it, did you do on move and on jump? No problem? Nathan says, mine isn't accepting the using Unity engine input system, which breaks the callback context below. Nathan, that could be because your package manager, it didn't do its thing somehow. That's the only reason why I wouldn't accept Unity engine. And if you did it in a different order, for example, if you didn't attach your player input component somehow. If your player input component's not there, it won't see the input system either. It's got to be connected before you do that. All right, I think this is a great place to put this up on GitHub. Remember, like last time, whenever I put things up on GitHub, I shut down Unity. So first I'm going to go File, Save. Then I'm going to go File, Save Project. And then for those people who can't do the thing you're supposed to do, like for example, Nathan, Jonah, or anyone else, start from this GitHub repo that I'm going to put up right now, okay? And again, I'm using Unity version 1.3F1. That's an older version that got working again, just to make it's better to be older than newer, to be honest, right? Because if I use a newer Unity version, now your newer Unity version is not going to break mine. Mine would break yours if if it was newer and you were using an older one. But this should work on the newer stuff. Okay, so I'm going to just close this down now. And I'm going to go and I'm going to put it up on GitHub. So just a second while I do that. I'm going to just use my command prompt for that. Just going to do it off screen here. And I'm just going to put this up on GitHub right now. 1 sec, and then you'll see it. You can put it up on GitHub with your favorite tool. I'm going to use my favorite tool. So again, I'm going to go to let's clear that up. Git add dot, git commit. I'm going to put everything up on GitHub, so it's going to take a second to do this because I'm not going to limit it. It's going to put the directory up there too. That's good. Now what I need is I need a GitHub repo. So let's do that next. So we'll say github.com and we'll say / Ontario Tech University. And we'll make a new one. So we'll say that it's INFR3110 in the fall 2020 semester, and it's lesson 9 ICE. Or did I call it something else? 1 sec. Let me just not do that for 1 sec. I may have called it. I just want to keep the same scheme. Yeah, that was right. All right. There's that. And now that I have a spot for it, I'll need these last 3 lines of code, like I've done before. And I'm going to go up here and go cd. Oh, sorry. Just right click. And then enter. Probably right click too many times. Now I'm telling you to do this now because one of your requirements for your in-class exercise is to put it up on GitHub. So this is your chance to do that. Yeah, that's why I don't like putting up my library like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Worst case scenario, you can always download it and kill the library to make it work. All right, let's refresh. And we're good, right? Here it is. This is up online now, so you can see it. And I'll take this link and I'll put it up on Canvas for you. So in week 9, we'll make a new link. So worst case scenario, if you can't make it work for whatever reason, we'll just say it's like week 9 GitHub repo. And we'll make it available so you can see it. And one more thing is we'll make it load in a new tab. So that way it doesn't bother anybody. Let's see if that works. Yep, it's all good to go. Okay, so I'm gonna get back I'm gonna reload my stuff now. I'm back into my code. I should be up in a second. So hopefully you guys are there with me now. All I did was I put it up on GitHub. You had your chance to put it up on GitHub too. And I did this because just in case something messes up, I can always go to my GitHub repo and download it, and we're good to go. All right, so awesome. So we got our inputs. That's what we did last time. We got all these inputs working, and we know they're working. But how do I differentiate between left and right and up? How do I do that? Well, there is, if you look at the PowerPoint again, there is something we can do, right? In order for us to get left and right context, we can use the context. Actually, I don't list it here. We can use the context itself to look at the control name. Take a look at that control name thing right here. So context will give us which control was the one that was pressed. Okay. So now this is where we're using binding again. So be careful. There's other ways to do this thing. You may have learned to do it differently for people who know how to use the new input system. I'm going to do it so that it's a little bit understandable. But the way to do it is in the move activated area. Let's just get rid of these debug logs now because we know it's going to be here, right? I want to do a switch case. And I'm switching which context name I'm going to get. So if I say context.name, depending on which one it's going to be, now notice it gives me a bit of an error. It says symbol context doesn't compute. Context gives us a bunch of things. It's context control.name is what I want. Context control name gives us a string of different names. Right now, one thing to note is we don't know what the names are going to look like. Let's just output. I'm just going to comment this out for a second. Sorry, one thing I forgot to do is show you how those names appear. So if I go to a debug.log and I say I want to print out the context control name, this is one way of doing it. All right, the context control name, let's print that out. It's a string, and I'm only going to do it for my on move, and it'll give us a chance to look at what it looks like on jump. So if I did this, and by the way, it would be nice if I could just do this and then pick the one I want, right? Like one of those. There's also, I want to also mention something else. Context also has a bunch of other stuff. It has the action, and if I look at the action, I can also look at, the action itself, which is what we're doing right here. This is the action. On move is the action that we're getting, all right now. We can also do things like read a value from the action. Context action, read value, and I can get a value for, how much I'm pressing it and so on. I'm not going to do that here, right? But that's another way of doing it. So what we really want is just the control name for now. So here's the control name. And let's make it run in Unity so we can see what the control name is if I press left and right. So I go here and let's make it go. And if I press the left or the A key, I have an A button. It just says A, lowercase a. If I press the right, it's lowercase d. This is important. The other keys don't compute. Spacebar doesn't work. If I press the left, it says left arrow in camel case, right? And press the right, it's right arrow in camel case. So these are important considerations. So where does this make any sense? What does if I look at controls, and if I look at my controls, right? And if I look at the bound actions, so if I look at move, it shows it here in this way here. It doesn't really give us a sense of what these actions look like, okay? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do, Daniel. A ton of things you can do with the context. I'm just doing something that's easier for us. But yes, you can pass all kinds of information to the context. But what we want is if the control name, if it's true or not. The way you would do it is if my control name, my current keyboard, and this is how you would do it. All right, here's how you do that. You say something like if keyboard dot current dot a key, right, dot, right, and you can say was pressed this frame. That's the way you do it. Or you can go is pressed, right? There's a bunch of is pressed, is actuated, a bunch of other stuff. But that's how you would look at the keyboard itself, right? So if it's pressed, you can specifically look at a key to do that. But if you're going to do this, then, well, on move wouldn't really matter, would it? Right? And this kind of takes care of is pressed this frame. So what we want instead is I want to use the switch case to see which one was pressed, right? This frame, which is what this thing is doing anyway. So I can use the control name to say, well, what if case, if it's A, then do something. Case, if it's left arrow, right? Actually, we can use both those. We can have them fall through, so we don't have to use a break here. So if it's A or K of left arrow, it does something, right? We can do it this way, and which kind of looks like a state machine in some ways. And if it's a B, or sorry, a D, B, or if it's also right arrow, one of those two options, then do something else. So those are the two cases. This is move left, this is move right. All right, so let's do a simple test first. So by default, my character, notice, is facing right. Okay, that's my character. He's facing right. And what I want him to do is when I press the left key, he's going to flip. So on his player, the player itself has something called the Sprite Renderer, and I want to say flip X. Flip on the X is what I want. So I want to get references to the Sprite Renderer and say flip X is equal to true. Let's just do that when I click the left button. And if I click the right button, flip X is equal to false. Let's do that. So luckily I have access to the Sprite Renderer right here. It's called M_Sprite Renderer. And what I can do is inside this, I can say, if I'm facing left, M_Sprite Renderer dot flip X is equal to true. And if I'm looking to the right, M_Sprite Renderer dot flip X is equal to false. Let's try this little test. So little baby steps. So Sprite Renderer will actually flip the image, or it will change its local scale to -1 on the x-axis, kind of, but only for the texture. All right, so let's take a look at that. And if I right-click, if I go to the left, I can go to the left. If I go right, I go right, and it actually changes the animation around. Okay, same thing with my A and D keys. A and D keys will change my animation around. And you can see how it's flipping right now. Look at that. So it's flipping. Okay. So that's this part right here. So Sprite Renderer, flip X, true or false. All right, next, what I want to do is I need some kind of context for movement. All right, so when I move, I want to push my character to move with physics. I want to use my physics 2D, and I want to add force in a particular direction. That's what I want to do. In fact, I want to do it like this. If I'm moving to the right, I want to say something like, hey, physics 2D, my rigid body, M_rigid body 2D, which I already have set up for you, dot, and I want to say add force, and I want to add force to the right, and I can use a vector 2D right, vector 2D to the right, vector 2D to the right, and I want to multiply this by some kind of speed. So let's make it so like there's some kind of vertical force or something. And I'm going to put a new Boolean up here that we can adjust on our inspector. So bool, we'll call it, sorry, not Boolean, a float, which we'll call vertical force. Vertical. I meant horizontal, but verticals too. We'll do vertical and horizontal because we're going to do the jumping too. Float horizontal force. Okay, so we got vertical and horizontal forces that we're going to use, right? And what I want to do is I want to multiply my force by my, I'm going to say my right, by my horizontal force. Multiply that by time dot delta time. Delta time. This one. Okay? And I want to do the exact same thing, but in the opposite direction. So I can say something like when it's right arrow, right? There's right arrow and left arrow. Left arrow is negative horizontal force. Or I can actually say I want to move vector to left. Same thing. Negative horizontal force or vector to left. I'm going to use vector to left and negative and horizontal force all positive. And vector to right and horizontal force all negative, right, kind of thing on the other way. So notice if I hover over vector to right, it's 1, 0. Vector to left is negative 1, 0. Right, so that's kind of left movement, right movement. And what I also want to do is I want to slow things down. So every frame that the move, well, actually I can't do it here. I'm going to do it in the update in a second. So this is cool. Let's see if this actually works. If this doesn't spam me or if I'm crazy fast or whatever. The way to make it work is I need to go to my player and I need to change my horizontal and vertical force. Let's put a value in there. Let's say something like, I don't know, 200 on the vertical and 200 on the horizontal by default. Let's see if that's enough. It's not, but let's see. If I press play, and if I move to the left, and I don't see myself moving at all. You should see the same thing. 200 vertical force, not enough. So what if I put something like, or horizontal force? Let's put something like 500, right? And again, you're going to see that if I press left arrow or right arrow, you know, I'm not really moving at all. See? I can move, I can shift around, but nothing happening. 1,000, 10,000, how about 10,000? Oh, now I'm starting to move, but it's really slow. Super slow. And it's like I'm not moving at all until I add to it. So that's kind of a weird thing. Take a look at that, what happened. So what is really happening here, guys? I just want to get you guys to think about this for a second. If I press play, and with 10,000, right, I can only move a little bit, but it accelerates, right? And if I press play, if I put 10,000, right? Oops, not A. So it moves and stops, but only a little bit. But if I hold it down, nothing happens. So I want it to hold it down and move, not move it like this. Why? Well, the delta time, right? The delta time is weird. The delta time really slows it down. And should we put it in here is the question. If I was doing a regular update or fixed update, the answer would be yes. But inside of this, because this is running in a coroutine, delta time may not be the right thing to do. Let's try it without delta time. Okay, so again, killing delta time, going back out to this. And let's try and a smaller value like this still, and then let's run it. That might be too much. Yeah, now it's okay, right? Notice how that works now? And I only have to press it once, and I can, it's like I'm still not really getting a control key down, right? It's a lot more powerful, right? But I'm still not getting a spammed kind of thing. So, yeah, they are. But why is it in this case? I mean, before when I was hitting the buttons, like if I press play, as an example, and I press right, I should expect that I'm gonna keep running all over the place, right? Like, look, it shouldn't just stop right? It just stops. As soon as I press the button the first time, my D key, I lose momentum. I'm not adding to my force anymore. I only press it once, right? So that's not what's expected in here, right? When I press my switch control name, right, then somehow this is only triggering one time. So what else could I do if this isn't working? What would you suggest? And for people who've already done this, because you guys have already done movement, what did you guys do with your control scheme? Because this isn't definitely not working. I mean, this is neat, right? But it's like I'm only acting once. It's almost like my control down. It's like I got my key down kind of suggestion here, as opposed to constantly moving. So it wasn't like I was spamming. It's almost like I'm only activating it once. That's the thing that I'm not doing. All right. So anyone have a suggestion? In ours, our callbacks except movement and looking, those are pulled. Okay. Yeah, that's definitely something I can do. So one suggestion is move the movement in the update, right? So I want to move in the update this thing here, move right, move left as an example, but do all my clicking here, right? So I'm checking to see if the moving is working, and if so, if on move, then I'm going to call the move function over and over again. But wouldn't that be the same? So example, if I made two functions, right? If I said something like move left and move right, let's make a move left function, all right? And by the way, you want to change this to, if I'm going to do that, fixed update is a way to go if I'm using any kind of physics. Fixed update instead of the regular update. So let's do it. Let's make a couple of them. One of them is going to be a private move left, and it's going to return void. Let's try just those two, okay? That's why I'm saying let's see what's happening here. Let's see how this is working, because I want to make sure that you guys understand what's going on. So private void move right. I want to pull in the actual functions themselves, and I want to call move left and move right here. So I want to take this and put this in here, move left, and take this out of here and put this in here, move right, okay? And in here, I just want to call my, now there's a couple ways to do that. I can call, I can wait to see if this is activated, right? So I can see if this is true, then moving right is true, and then I can keep updating my force. So I can say something like move left. If I'm moving left, like some kind of thing that's been activated, if I'm moving left this frame, then do this kind of stuff. I could do that, right? But then I kind of bypass the whole movement thing in the first place, right? Daniel says, do we add an interaction to the action map? Okay, let's go there and check that out. So if I go back to the action map, my controls, you see that there's an interaction. If I click on plus, right? So there's a couple of interactions. We can go press, hold, slow, tap, and so on. That's one thing I could do. So if I said hold for my interactions for the move, right? So if I add hold, and then it says press point is 0.5, hold time is 0.4. So this actually might generate what we want. Thank you so much for that. That's the hold one. All right, let's see if this gives us any more stuff for this, right? Because otherwise we would have to generate all kinds of code for nothing, right? So let's leave it as is, just like this, and this just for move. And let's go back to this again, and then undo those changes, all right? I just wanted to point it out because we're going to go down a bad hole, right? Because then I'm going to put those ones in this, and my fixed update's going to basically check a Boolean, and yeah, that's cool, right? So let's go back to this, and let's just put it back the way it was, all right? So we don't need this. We don't need move right, left. We'll leave move left and right there for no reason. But for now, let's try this again, and let's put that delta time back in, right? Because now we're going to see spamming. Time dot delta time. All right. We're getting there, guys. But you get a sense of what I'm doing, right? All right, so we want to save this map. Make sure it's saved. All right, it's already automatically saved. And let's go back to my player where our player's low values are low. That's okay. Let's press now and see what happens if we just go with that. So again, if I press left, nothing. What if I put a little bit bigger value and the horizontal force? Did I not do things? Did I save? Yeah, I got that going. Let's put another value in. I think this the do I have to hold it for a length of time? I think the hold time is something that I have to mess with a little bit. Let's go a higher value. And 10,000 should be the exact same thing. I think that interaction map is something I need to change. I can't leave standard values in there. Because now it's expecting me to hold for a length of time. So let's go back to this, default. So press point as an example, and we'll say 0.1, and hold time we'll go 0.1. Just want to see what that difference is, and it's probably too short now. Go back to play. Let's change these to higher values. I'm spanning the crap out of this thing. That seemed to actually mess me up. Am I missing something? You guys know. I am missing something for sure when it comes to interaction, a hold interaction. Because I think that a press, or is it a press? It might be a press. Because these interactions are, notice what it says is for the action type is button. Maybe it's a button press that I need. Press only. Press and release. Release only. I think it's this one. Let's get rid of this one. Go hold, and let's go default. Sorry, just one more chance to check this out. And is it big enough? I just want to be able to move something around before. Oops. Hold interactions don't seem to work for me. Let's look at that. This is the thing with the input system, the documentation. So Unity input system interactions. That's what I wanted. Because I want to do the waiting started performed multiple controls. Sticks, scalar. That is when it's performed. Press point. Okay, here it is. So, slow tap, the tap, and the hold. Requires the user to hold the control for a duration seconds before the input system triggers. No, that's not what I want. You can use a press interaction to explicitly force button-like interaction. That's what I wanted. Use this behavior parameter to select the interaction should trigger on button press, release, or both. This is the one that should work. So the press is what we wanted. So when we started, so there's a couple of callbacks, the started and performed, and I'm wondering if I have to use a different callback now for this one altogether. Let's go back to the map. So player input, and if I go to events and I go to player, and then I have the controls changed. No, there is no other control scheme. Just want to make sure there's nothing else in here that I'm missing. So I was able to do this no problem before. I am totally missing something, guys. If help me out if you see something that I'm totally not doing. So I'm pretty sure when I did it last time that it was super easy. Interaction should be press. And what are my input settings? Yeah, these are minimum time. So the press time, button press point is 0.5. Yeah, that looks right, actually. And it says default. Let's go with a smaller value. Let's go with 0.1. And let's increase that value before we try it again, like to 10,000 ahead of time. Horizontal. I just want motion. Hey. Okay, good. This is good. But does it only press it once again, or? Okay, so it only allows it once. That's good. As long as I can move, I'm good to go. That's what I care about. So that means that this is how long the button press will work for. Press only. Let's go for press and release. And let's go with default values. Okay. And let's try that again. Why is it only working on one side but not the other? Left and right, time set to, okay, I mean we can take delta time off, but that shouldn't matter. It's not, we're not getting the right interaction again. Sorry guys, I'm just speeding through this now because I want to make sure that it's working. So no, this should be flying us now. Yeah, that'll fly us. Okay, so let's go back to my player and let's get back to, we took off delta time, so now we should be able to reduce this a great deal. And we'll move this back to something smaller, 200, which is where it should be. Cool. And even 200 is too much. Yeah, but why not the other way? So let's go with 100. Why not the other way? I mean, I can spam it. I can press it like a button, but I can't. It won't continuously hold. Maybe it's this, but I'm still getting interaction. So my contacts. This will do which one is being pressed. What if you also add a hold interaction? Okay, we can do that. So the hold interaction, it says requires the user to hold the control for a duration of seconds before the input system triggers the action. Tap time. Yeah, I want to be able to, and there's custom interactions. Yeah, I want to do this. I want to do this, but it's not. It's basically all I want to do is just. So this is hold and release. So what if I went back to that thing? I think it's just me. So if I go back to my controls and go to. Yeah, let's go back to hold. Let me just go to press only. So I think all we need is press only. I'm pretty sure. But let's see what that does. Because press only should do it, if I'm not wrong. So if it only does it once. And it has a cooldown. It is better when I make it work better. It's not the new system, Daniel. It's me. If that's what it is, right? Because I'm making this wrong. Because when I tried it in my prep, it wasn't like this. It's just that let's go with a smaller value here. The press point. So it has a cooldown, is what it looks like. But Daniel, I totally agree with you. Okay, so we're gonna just do the for now. I just want to make it work. I'm always of that mind. Make it work, and then if it doesn't work, you know, you can figure it out what it's like last time. So we're gonna make what you guys said before, which was that's why I left these here. Move left and move right. And basically, what I'm gonna say is if this is turned on. So I've pressed my control, and what you can do is you can use a in fixed update. You don't have to even do this, or even the callback context. what you can do is you can do the if statement stuff again. You can say something like if keyboard dot current dot a key dot was pressed this frame, as an example, or we can say or, and we'll ignore the other context altogether. We'll just use this context here for flipping, because we only want to flip once, right? Or keyboard dot current dot the a key is the left arrow key, right, was pressed this frame, one of the two. Then let's just do one interaction first, and we'll do the other one. We'll do this one, and we'll put that in there, and we'll get rid of that interaction map that we talked about right now. We'll just do one at a time. For now, we'll just do it here, and then I'll put it somewhere else. And this should be definitely in double brackets, like so. Best laid plans, you know how it is. When you plan something and then you don't do it again. Now this is going to need delta time, but let's see what happens with me if I just go left. Okay, that looks a lot better. All right, so now let's put in the delta time stuff. So time times time dot delta time. I didn't want to do it this way. I wanted to do it the nice way, but whatever. And then I'll do the same thing for the right side. So I'll say if instead of A key, it's D key, and left arrow, it's right arrow. And we'll take the right stuff, which is this part, because I want to finish off, so I don't want to keep you guys. Is go to the right, wonderful, multiplied by times dot delta time. And we only want to do this, the other wrinkle that we want is we only want to do this when we're grounded. So we're going to check to see if we're grounded. Is grounded. So we're just going to take all this and put that inside there, and we should have some movement now at this point. Unfortunately, it just didn't work the way I wanted it, but that's okay. We can make it work. Read value vector 2. You need to do, oh, right. But I think it'll work this way too. Let's see. Yeah, it will work. It's just a matter of, sorry, gotta clear this one. Right, horizontal force delta time. Yeah, I'm gonna do it your way in a sec. That's the right way to do it. Come on. What is my player behavior? Tell me. 100. Damn it. I think you have to do, I have no choice but to read the value, because otherwise I'm going to get that one step. Yeah, so the way that works is, that's what I had to do. The way that works is I do the context dot read value, and what I want to put in there is a vector 2, and what that does is it generates my the direction that I'm going into, and read value should be in square bracket, angle brackets, like so, like this. I think is what it looks like. Read value, right? Context, and it's got to be for the particular action, if I'm not wrong. So I think it's action dot read value and then vector 2, if I'm not wrong, something like that. And let's see if that's true. Vector 2, non-invocable vector 2 cannot be used like a method. Okay, sorry, I meant like this. That'll be okay. So that's what I wanted to, and this will give me the positive or negative values that I want, which means I don't have to do any of this, right? So that means that if I can read the vector 2 and multiply it by the action. So I can say something like this, context. What a disaster. And then what I can do is I can say that I can put that right in here. So I can say something like direction is equal to this, which is a direction vector, right? I'm going to get a direction vector, and then from there I can multiply it by the rigid body add force. So I can do something like that in there. And then the only thing I need to do is keep these in there for my looking directions. That's all I need to do. So that is, instead of vector right, I would put in direction. Because that's going to give me the direction right, left. No, Kyle, there's no vector ones. It's only it's X and Y by default. So there's also a vector, but I've never seen it, a one-dimensional vector. Like an X you're talking about. How will this give left and right? Well, the context will tell me when I give a A or D key, it'll decide whether I'm going right or left. That's what it's supposed to do. That's what it's supposed to do. Okay? Let's see if this works again. So, and it all depends. I'm not putting a delta time in there, so let's see if that's going to work at all. So, I'm just going to tap it once and see if that works. Okay, so now I'm getting this what I don't want to do. Invalid operation exception, which is the delegate helpers thing. Okay, so why is that not? Oh, because the action, right? Action read value vector 2. Read value float. I don't need the dot action. Okay. So you're talking like just this? I knew it was something wrong. Thanks, guys. You're being very helpful in my complete disaster over here today. It's fantastic. I love it. But I'm still getting a weird. I mean, it's working. I can flip around, but I can't. And I'm not getting any values. So why is that? Are you sure that this is all? I don't need an action, Anthony. The dot action. I know we're timing out, guys. If you have to go. So the thing is, it's supposed to be actually quite easy, but it's obviously a lot harder than it looks because my brain can't remember it. So let's go back to the action. I got my notes. Hold on a second. I'll go back to my notes. I didn't want to do my notes. I wanted to like do it off the top of my head and impress all of you, but it just, I'm just being honest. It did not work properly. So. It is what it is, man. All right, we're going to make it go. You got to set up it in the action map with a 2D vector composite in the editor. Right. So you're saying in the action map, just a moment. So that is in here. And not in the interaction, right? You're talking about the action type is button, right? Not value, correct? If I go value, then I think the action type is value, the type is button, and there's a vector 2, right? There's the control type, vector 2. That's what we're missing, if I'm not wrong. It has to be passed through. Okay. All right, let's see if that works. So that's what we're missing. Okay, let's try that again. Yeah, I can hear you. Did I make a mistake?
What you need to do is add a new binding for move.
Another one?
Yep. The plus icon there.
Yeah.
Or not a new action, just a new binding.
Sorry, let's just get rid of it. Delete. A new binding for the move event. I mean,
the plus icon on the right there.
Yep. But you're talking about inside of move, right?
Yeah, right there.
Okay. And you want
to give you vector composite.
And that's what you need.
Yeah, and then you put.
Oh, right.
in there.
Right. God, isn't that terrible? So composite, you want to go left. And then the path is going to be the keyboard, blah, blah. Now, we still keep these, right? Because those are button presses, right? And I think you just put in the same thing. Don't you put the A value in there? a keyboard?
Yeah, you can click that listen button, and then it will actually listen on the keyboard. So you can press the A button and just pop up.
Same thing thing that I just did, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I thought so. And then we don't care about up and down because we're not going to get up and down values. So then we're going to go path, and then we're going to go D keyboard. All right. So that you're saying that's good enough. And then we also need the same thing for. What about if I wanted the arrows? Don't I have to do the same thing for the arrows?
You can make another cheapy vector composite, and then just the arrow keys.
And that's all I have to do. Now I can name this, right? I can say this is keyboard, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, these are the A and D keys. Thank you. That'll be okay. A and D. And we'll say another one. Thank you for this. And we'll do the other one would be arrows. So I know which ones they are. So this one will be the arrow. This is left arrow for the keyboard, left, and this will be right arrow for the keyboard, right. I'll be okay.
Okay. Not sure if the other bindings that you set up would mess it up.
You mean the A and the D?
I would watch out for that.
For these ones?
Yeah, the old ones.
These ones are okay for what I did them for. You kind of need both of them because these ones give you vectors and the other ones are which ones get activated. I think you can use all four. And it's not a problem. Let's see. If not, we'll erase them, right?
All right.
So let's see if that works, and then we'll just run this thing, and it should be good. And I'm still getting the same situation. Okay, so let's get rid of the bindings that I had before, which is not a big problem. I can just get rid of them. And we can add them in afterwards, right? So let's go delete. I don't think it's the reason what's happening, but you know what? I'm okay to delete them. It was pretty simple to put them in. Okay, so, and then rebind and go to it. I don't get an error anymore, but I still get the same stuff. So it's like I need an interaction, if I'm not wrong, now.
I think it's probably the logic you have in your script.
Tell me. I'm good. I'll change it. Are you talking about this?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think what's happening is it does it one time because it's calling the event one time. So
You mean this on move event?
yeah, it calls the on move event when you press the key, right? And then you just add the force one time.
But that's how. See, that's the thing. So this event is only triggering once. That's what I'm saying to you. So this is where we put in the interaction, right? So if you go to interactions and if you go into press, if I'm not wrong, then
I haven't used that particular part of the input stuff, but
it's okay. Sure. Let's go press. We'll go press and release, and then we'll see. I think that that will do it. Because press and release will give us the type of thing that we want. Let's just put this over here for now and try it out. Because it'll be almost like we're going to listen for pressing is what we're listening for. Like interactions is what kind of way you need to interact. Wait for you to hold and then call it once still. That's not what it says. It says press interaction is only necessary when wanting to customize button press behavior. For default press behavior, simply set the action type to button and use the action without interactions added, which is kind of what we did. So instead of action type to pass through. Okay, well, let's do that. So we'll say action type is button, but then, value, and then vector 2. So we can't do button in vector 2 because button and vector 2 aren't compatible somehow. Look, right? So maybe it's instead of pass through, it's value. Let's see if that's true. Same effect. There's no difference in value or pass through. So what about if we said hold? A hold actually says this is the press point and the hold time, right? So how long you can hold for, and this is the press point. Because when I looked at the documentation just now, it just said that, where the heck is it? It said something that is gone. I love you guys, man. You guys are great that you guys can wait for me like this. This is awesome. Good learnings for all. New Unity input system. Let's get back to this. And I want to say the interactions. So I have the interactions here for a reason. And what I read was that the hold, use a hold of control for duration of seconds before the input system triggers the action. So that's not what we want. It's got to be the press, right? Use the behavior parameter to select if the interaction should trigger an on button press. Release or both. That's what it says. So we have a started and performed. Yeah, so it can't be this. Anthony says, what I do is flag to true or false, depending on whether the button is pressed or not. But then that kind of defeats the purpose, no? If I'm creating booleans, it should do it on its own. Let's go press only and see what that does. Yeah, it seems like we're missing something. That's what I'm saying to you. Like, this works if I just keep pressing the button. If I spam the button, I'm good to go. I can move left and right, no problem. We're done for the day. But that's not that's not the exercise. I shouldn't need to do this, guys. Press the button, right? Create an internal vector 2 so it doesn't work via callbacks, but in the update. Yeah, but then we're using the update. If I'm using the update, I might as well use the old system. That's what I'm trying to tell you, right? Needs to be that way. Okay, well, let's see. So you're saying an internal vector 2 like move left, right? What would you do? How would you do it, Daniel? A callback. Sorry, let's go back in here. So you're saying inside of here, you wouldn't do this kind of thing. On the contrary, what you would do is say, I don't see how you could hold something with a callback. Yeah, but then again, I could, if that's true, then I could. Can't I just check the same way I just did it here? I mean, why the heck do I even have this thing for my direction? This tells me if I'm going left or right. That's what this does, right? But what's happening is I'm only getting this pressed one time, right? So the coroutine only triggers, because that's what this is at the end of the day. In the back end, this is a coroutine that's firing, right? So on move is to update the vector. So all it does is change their direction. Okay, so you can do that. So you can say that if that's true, then I can say that private direction, which is a vector 2D. Let's do what you're saying, Daniel. Direction. Okay, and then we'll say this is going to use the private direction method that we're going to use. We're also going to flip ourselves, but we don't do the add force here at all, right? We do the add force inside of here only if we're grounded. So let's do on this. That should fix this then. If what you're saying is correct, all we have to do is do this. And then now, because we're in the update again, we need to do times.delta time. Because if we don't do time.delta time, it's going to spam. All right, let's see how that works. And we'll see if we solved it. And we don't need interactions in this case at all. And we'll go back to the player and make sure that this value is higher, like something like 500. Because it's force, not speed. Hey, okay, that's pretty good. Okay, that solved it then. Thank you, Daniel. What awesomeness. Okay, so that gives you movement this way, and then now, since we've got that figured out, we don't want it to spam on the button anyway. So the way we've done the button for the other control, so for jump, I think this is good enough. Just space. I don't think we need to do. It is a button. It's not a vector. Vector A and D makes sense for movement, but not for jump. So if that's true, and if we're only going to jump once, we don't need delta time at all, because delta time only slows us down when we're spamming, right? So let's get into this. So then in here on, we don't need this part. That's what we wanted to avoid. That's the whole idea. In here, what we want to do is we just want to activate our force. We want to add force up in the vertical direction, and we don't have to do that more than once. So we'll say that, this is good. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do rigid body add force. Just a moment here. And we should have jumping and moving in here. Add force in the, instead of in the direction, we'll say vector2 dot up, and we'll say vertical force, because we definitely want this to be vertical force, this one, and no delta time, because delta time would be bad because we're not spamming, and that should be good every time we press the space bar, which is what should happen there. Now we just have to choose the right value, and I'm not sure that 200, might be something like 250 is okay. Let's try that vertical force. It's too much. So let's try 100. No, it needs to go a little bit more. And it's kind of floaty, to be honest. So let's see that. It's really floaty. Why is it so goddamn floaty? That's like terribly floaty. Rigid body set normal. It's simulated. Mass is right. But it's like it's not pulling very much. But that's how it should work, because I'm throwing an object up, right? So spam space is fun. 150? Let's try 150, just for you, Michael, since you're saying it. Yeah, it's not bad. It just seems a little floaty. It seems like like gravity for this guy should come down a little heavier, right? And he shouldn't fall down into oblivion. All right, so it looks like we have a little bit of movement. This satisfies my requirements for the little tutorial today. Yay! But it just, he falls a little bit too quickly for me, and we have to also make him move. One thing we can do when we activate this part in here, this is still okay to do, is to do the animation. We can do the m_animator dot set integer, and we can say that anim state is equal to 1 when he's moving, left or right. Actually, we only have to do this once because he's going to flip on move, so he's always going to move here when we go to that point. Now the thing is, what happens if he stops moving? Because when he's moving, he's going to go there, but then when he stops, when I'm not pressing this, I don't get a direction. So maybe what I'll do is I have to put these in there, because if one of these things is not being pressed, we should go back to the other one. It's almost like a default value. That's a problem. So I want to start and stop animations, but this is only going to start it, not stop it. So I'm wondering if we stop the animation, as an example, when we and to go to idle animation, he's got to go back to idle again. That's going to be a challenge. I mean, I guess if my direction, which is if my direction is positive or negative, if the direction is anything at all, but then the force will stop, right? I guess I could see if because eventually what's going to happen is my velocity is going to go to 0. So I could say something like if m_, that's really weird though, rigid body .2 velocity is less than 0.1 f. I could do that. Then on the x-axis only, so dot x is what we want to say, right? Then and only then do you want my anim state m_rigid body, animator dot anim dot set integer anim state to be back to 0. So if it's less than 1, my velocity, and that's going to be a normalized vector, so we're going to be okay there. And I'm thinking that I'm thinking that we can probably put the animation code in here once, because this is only going to trigger one time, right? When I'm actually doing something, when it's in its higher end. So trigger it to 1, and when I'm 0, when I stop moving, it'll go 0. Let's try that. So let's go, and when I press left or right, then I start. Oh no. Oh, that was weird. Is that, do I have exit time? What is it that I have in my animation, in my animator? That should not be the case. I have an idle, but I should not have exit time. Do I have exit time? No, I don't have exit time in there, and I don't have exit time on the way back. I don't have exit time anywhere, so why is it not activating? It's the same thing. It's only activating one time. Are you supposed to have delta time in the fixed uptake because you have greater than or not less than, or the reverse of ignore? Then yeah, no, of course it would. You need it. No, I'm thinking about the animation states. So every time we click on move, I click my animation to 1. But I'm wondering if my velocity is this. If this is even gonna. This is not a good enough value. So let's just turn this off for now. I just want to see something. If it just actually stays on when I move. Or does it go on at all? It's a different way of doing things, right? So let's see if this works. Yeah, it's triggering idle. And it's going to keep going forever. That's good. And now when I slow down, it should stop. So let's see what the player velocity looks like. This player velocity is what I want to do, but it should be maybe a lot less, 0.5, like really close to 0 is what we want, like approximately equal to 0. Maybe 0.1 is too slow. That's weird. Did I not? Oh. Yeah. So, okay, and now it won't trigger at all. So it looks like, okay, so it's got to be way less than 0.5, like 0.1, like really close to 0 for it to run, it looks like. Because that 0.1 is 0.1 units, not 0.1, that's why it's not allowing me to go to a certain point. So it's got to be like really, really low, like 0.01 or approximately 0. And it can't be. Is it less than 0.1? It's got to be less. Yeah. So it's like my velocity's got to be approximately 0. I think there's a math f approximately. Math f dot. Is there a yeah? It is approximately, and with my m underscore rigid body 2d dot velocity dot x and 0.0f. That's what it needs to be. So if this is true, math f approximately equal to 0, then I go to anim state 0. That's when that's the only time I go there. Otherwise I won't. Like it just won't do it. And I guess it's the same thing we talked about before. If I'm grounded and I'm adding force, if my direction is positive or negative, then what's happening is it's not activating. It'll activate once, but it won't keep activating because this will activate every frame, right? So I guess I can say it could be the other way around. If it's not 0, then he's moving. But that means that when he's in the air, he's got velocity, which is kind of a weird thing. So that shouldn't be in here either. That should be up here. Anytime he moves at all, it should be triggering when he's moving to the left. No, this is the velocity. Velocity is going to be yeah, you're right. I'm thinking about the magnitude of his speed, right? So I've got to clamp his magnitude in here or whatever. So if it's, okay, sorry. So if, that's another way to do it. If I've got a positive velocity, so this is what I can do. I can base it on velocity, which is kind of a weird thing. But I can say something like if my, if mathf, or no, sorry, it's if m underscore rigid body 2d dot velocity dot x is greater than 0.1, let's say, then or it's less than negative, one of the two. Well, that's going to be moving to the right. My velocity is positive. Maybe I want to say the absolute value, mathf dot abs. So the absolute value, doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. If it's greater than 1, if absolute value of this is greater than 1, then and only then do I want to make my anim state 1 to run. Otherwise, if my mathf absolute value, no, if this is equal to 0, so if it's on the x-axis and it's equal to 0, then I'm in idle. All right, let's see if that works. And I don't need anything else. Let's try that. That's a weird way of doing it, though. I'm not really happy with that. Magnitude can do it too, yeah. Okay, it's kind of weird. It does work. It just takes time to slow down. It doesn't look right. So, I'm still not convinced this is even correct. With the direction, if the direction is positive, right, then it should flip x. And if the direction is negative, it should go the other way around. And we can do it off direction, the direction vector itself. Right? When he moves right, it works fine. So when he moves left, it triggers anim state to 0, and when he moves right, it works fine. Yep. So I think this is going to be okay, like the way this works. It's just that he is moving a little bit too slowly, or his animation rate is slidey, which means that I would probably put this up even higher, maybe like 600. Because that way he'll look like he's running at the right rate. But he should stop running right away, which means that his velocity, math approximately, instead of this being, so it's got to be less than 1. So if it's greater than 1, and if this approximately is equal to, let's say we'll say 0.9. As soon as it goes down to 0.9, then that will stop it. Because comparing, the reason why I'm using approximately is comparing real numbers. Is a real mess. That should stop now. Come on. 0.9. So less than. Math of approximately is 0.9 or less. Let's look at the absolute value again. ABS, right, as an example of velocity thing. The absolute value of the velocity is less than 0.9. Right, and it's not 0.9, it's 0.09. That's what I meant. If it's less than this, then stop. If it's greater than this, then go. Right, and there's going to be a bit of a disconnect for a second where it's not going to do anything. Let's try that out again. We have to use greater than or equal to in a sec. Not happy with it. It was better when I did it before. It's got to slow down quicker, like way quicker than this. Like greater than 0.1 to start moving, that's 0.1 units of movement for it to go. So let's see if that works one more time. So if I press it once, it starts immediately, but it doesn't slow down fast enough. So it's like I want it to be less than or equal to, so this is greater than or equal to 1. If it's greater than or equal to 0.1, it's less than 0.9. And maybe I'll say less than 0.1. If it's less than this and greater than that, let's see what happens then if I do that. And that would be the absolute values, which is like the magnitude, right, of the velocity vector. But only on the x-axis. So you don't care about the y-axis. Yeah, it just carries forward a little bit too long, in my opinion. Okay, I'm not going to fool with this anymore. It needs tweaking. And that means that we have to think about what I'm doing and all this stuff. But it satisfies requirements. Okay, now, what I want to do, since you guys are still on with me, is, and I'm recording, or falling. Yeah, falling would make it would trigger. Let's see if that would work. Yeah, falling will make it trigger for sure. Let's see that. So if I go like this and fall, but what I should do is instead of falling, like so, right, then this would only work if I'm not grounded, right? So the only time I can stop is if I'm grounded. But what I can say is I can slow myself down more. I can say on update every frame, I can like immediately stop myself. Like do something like m_rigidbody2d dot velocity, and then multiply times equals to 0.9. Right, I could do that, which would slow me down every frame, almost like a lerp, if you will, an inverse lerp. So that would be really bad. That means I have to increase my horizontal force a little bit, and only if I'm grounded, not every frame. This is going to happen. This is going to happen all the time, and this should only happen when I'm grounded. So this should be like so. And this all should be inside of is grounded, because you shouldn't be able to move one way or the other. Stopping. Should I be able to stop when I'm grounded? Absolutely. When I'm not grounded, I should be able to stop. So that should be that. So I'll stop moving when I'm grounded, right? But this will slow me down every frame, but only when I'm grounded, but not anywhere else. So it'll keep on making me go faster everywhere else. Okay, let's try that again. And oh yeah, that's better. But now I got to put more force. Let's put 1,000 in there. Again, it's just a force number. Who cares? Yeah, better. Needs a little bit more oomph. Maybe 0.9 is too much too. That's pretty good. All right, so let's go 0.99 and then take away some of that force, because it shouldn't be that much. Let's go back to 1,000. So 0.99 is going to be pretty much the same as the original. So let's see how bad that is. Yeah, too much. So let's go back to 0.97. So what this is doing is it's just reducing it every frame. It's really a cheap trick. Your repo got too big to, yeah, it's my fault. It's because I didn't put a git ignore file. It's a comedy of errors today, man. No, it needs to be less than that, like 0.95. But this is cool. I like making, this is good learnings. It's not stopping on a dime, and I'm really not liking its like animation state. It's going to wait till it's like finishes. Anyway, so these numbers need to be tweaked, but let's see how the jumping works again. So if I go right and then jump, I can do a double jump. I shouldn't be able to double jump unless I am grounded. I shouldn't be able to jump at all. So this will be ungrounded too. So if is grounded, and only if it's grounded, then I want to be able to jump. And that will stop me from doing that altogether. And that should give me movement. It's kind of weird. Oh, yeah. So that means that my 150 might need to go to 200. like I had it before, 250. And the reason why is before I didn't care if I was grounded. Now I do. All right. Weird that he's moving so slow. I'm not really happy about that. Okay, so that's one part. Let's fix the other part, which is the let's take him away. Let's make sure his overrides apply all, any changes I made, which are important, and let's get rid of them. Delete. And then in the world controller, let's go back and pull this on. And what I want in the world controller is when he appears, he's going to appear above the world. I don't need this part. I need to make a reference to him in the world controller, and I think we're done, guys. In a really big, painful way. Game object player. Want to instantiate him every single time and delete him. But we need also a spawn point for the player. Spawn point. Public. So instead of a player, yeah, no, I need a player. Public game object. I need a transform. Public transform. Spawn point. Yeah, spawn point there. So I want to put the spawn point in the world first. That's always going to be in the world. So let's add a new game object. So I think a new empty one, which I'm going to call spawn point. There we go. And let's go back to the scene itself for a second. So here's the spawn point. Let's add a bit of a tag to the spawn point so we can see it. And let's move it around. So I want to put the spawn point somewhere right here. And we're going to say that when the player appears, he's going to appear at the spawn point. So now in the world controller, I need the spawn point as well as the prefab from the player, which is here. And what I want to do right now is let's run it and see what happens for a second. Okay, so it overrode everything, which is what I thought it would do. And what is this operation? What input.get key down? Oh yeah, we have to change that. We can't do that. Yeah, so this doesn't work anymore. Input key down. We need to make another thing in our world controller that allows me to set up the world, right? So I need an input, or for now, let's just undo this change so we can make it do it once. Yeah. Alright, so it overrode everything, and the player's going to appear there. Let's make the player then. Where is the spawn point? There. And go back to the transform. I think we need to put it something like above the world, someplace, and above the camera, in that space right there. Something like 3.4 and 0. 3.4 and 0. Instead of copying it, it's pretty simple to remember. 3.4 is where the spawn point is going to be, and this is where the player is going to appear in the world when we generate it for the first time. Yes. Okay. So what we're going to say is on generate, we're going to do two things. Well, on start, first of all, I'm going to make the player appear for the first time, only on start. So we're going to say instantiate, and we're going to say the player at the spawn point, quaternion identity. All right, so that's where he's going to appear at the beginning. Why am I getting an issue? Spawn point dot position is what this is going to do. So this is where the spawn point. So the player is going to appear there, and then what I want to do is when I generate, every time I generate again or regenerate, I want to move the player back there. So I'll just do it one time. So I'll say something like because it'll do it twice, but it's okay. So I'll say the player dot transform dot position is equal to the transform dot position. And we're going to do that one time there, in generate, but we don't want to do it more than once. And let's just do it. See what happens. Okay, good. So he's in play, and then we can move him to the right and to the left, which is kind of what we wanted. There it is. Look at that, guys. And we should be able to do everything now as well. Now what we want to do is we want to say that the player, the main camera, follows the player. So we need a main camera script really quickly. So we'll say make a new camera behavior script. So under scripts, we're going to make a new script. And we're not going to have any smoothing right now, but we would normally do that. God. That's what happens when you're broadcasting live. Delete. Again. Come on. Chug chug. Camera behavior. So the camera behavior script is going to be on the main camera. And the main camera is going to do the following. It's going to basically stay with the player's transform, but only on the X and Y axis. So every update, what it's going to do is the transform dot position is equal to a new vector 2 position on X and Y only, which is going to be equate to the player's position. So I need a reference to the player, public game object player, and we're going to say that player dot X and the player. Actually, we just say the transform. You can see the player's position is equal to the only thing I'm worried about is the player's Y. Yeah, let's be safe. Player dot transform dot Y and the player dot transform dot X. That's what we're looking for there. A little bit overkill, but and it's not the transform dot position. So really, I don't even need the whole player, but we don't know what it's going to happen. Maybe I'll need them later, so leave it as is. I probably just need the transform. All right, so that is overkill for sure. But that every frame, what's going to happen is get rid of the start function. I don't need that. And oh, actually, I do need that because I need to find the player in the scene. So I need to say that player is equal to get component. Game object. Game object dot find object of type. Sorry, typing errors. Find object of type player behavior. That's what I want to find, and that's going to equal to the game object is what I want, right? So that player is anything that has a player behavior on it is going to be found once, and I don't re-spam it. All I do is move it, so it's only going to happen for the first time. Okay, let's see if that happens. And now it's order of execution. I may have to do this on somewhere else, like on late. Yep. Because what I really want is for the player to be here, but this has to happen on. And so where is this thing? Let's go back to the player. It says unassigned reference exception, and that messed things up. So I could, but then the scene wouldn't start with the player. I do, absolutely, Dylan. If you wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know I'm running way over time. I'm so sorry. You can submit till tomorrow if you want. We don't have to. You're good to submit with what you have. I'm just making it fancy now. I'm just going to continue until I'm done, and then I'll put this up on so you guys can watch it later. Yeah. So I mean, I could do that, but then there's not going to be a main camera in the scene, Kyle. So I could definitely do that. I can say something like, let's put the player back in the scene for a second, then attach the camera to the player, right? problem with the camera being on the player is that won't be a camera in the scene initially, which is not a big deal, but then I can take away the camera behavior script. I don't need it anymore, right? So remove that component. That's a good thing about it. Yeah, let's see how that looks. I don't mind. I'll try it. And then now the camera is part of the player, but not anything else, and we can get rid of the scripts. But I don't like it because what this is going to do, the camera, at least having a camera script, is the camera can follow the player slowly, like smoothly. This way it might look like really crap. Okay, that's okay, because I have the player in play. That's why it happened like that. Delete. And then, yeah, there's no camera rendering, and then the camera comes into play. Sometimes that happens. But now at least the camera follows the player, which is kind of what we wanted in the first place. Yeah, he's got a weird collider, but now you can see I can go throughout the scene, which is kind of cool. Yep. So it's not necessarily a bad solution. I just don't like the fact that it's not rendering anything right away. That's all. So, but in terms of what we wanted, did we accomplish what we wanted? Yeah, absolutely, right? Because, you know, we've got a guy, he can fly, he can run, right? And he can go through the entire scene, and it's procedurally generated scene, which is what we kind of wanted, except when he gets off the world and he falls forever. But we can make that scene really large, right? Because I can go to the world controller and say, I want a width of 1,000. So chances are, for a while, he's going to be there. So thanks, Kyle. It was okay, but again, not not something that I totally liked. But only because from a long-term perspective, it's not great. And it's a little bit, like I got to really press it for it to go. He's still moving, in my opinion, way too slow. The player prefab, like he's slowing down way too much, and I don't think it's necessary for me to pump up his speed the entire time. But he can go, man. Right? There we go. Endless runner, almost. Or it feels like that until he gets to the end. Well, that was weird. He was in a tight spot there. And you can turn on things like a mini map, which we've done before, and all those kind of things as well. So not terrible. I mean, at least it is procedurally generating. There we go. All right, guys, that was great. Thank you so much for sticking around. I will stop recording now and take questions and put this up on GitHub. Thank you so much for my tomfoolery, no pun intended. And we'll see you, whoever's watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. See you guys next week. But I will stop recording to take questions. Thanks. All right. Who had a question?